Oh man. Boys, get ready for this man girl. Boys. What? Riley J. Dennis back at it again, telling us why we should date who she thinks we should, and if we don't, we're some sort of phobic. Without even watching the video, it's already stupid based on the title. Am I judging a book by its cover? Yeah. Is it appropriate in this situation? Certainly. Are genital preferences transphobic? Nope. Thanks for watching. Darling, I actually keyframed that and all, just for a stupid 2-second joke.
On the internet, there's been a lot of discussion around genital preferences and transphobia.
That's a lot of unnecessary discussion, to be honest, Doug.
In this video, I'm going to use the word cissexism and—
Whoa. I didn't think at this point we were still inventing words, but I guess we still are. That's the first time I've heard that one. And while I don't really agree with it, I'm really not surprised it's a thing. How could you be? What does that even mean, though? Cissexism. Sexism against cis people or cis people that are sexist? I'd say the latter, looking at the overall context of this, but honestly at this point it's not safe to assume anything in these streets.
Instead of transphobia.
Oh, I spoke too soon.
But they're really similar words. At its most basic, cissexism means prejudice or discrimination against transgender people.
But of course, once again, us sissies, kinda clever, right? We're the evil of the world.
So what's been happening is that some people are making the argument that it's not cissexist at all to only be attracted to people with one kind of genital.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty accurate statement. We should create a word for that. Like maybe something geometrical even. Maybe perpendicular people? Obtuse people? Nah, that just sounds like a medical condition. I have an idea. We should just say strudel people. You thought I was gonna say straight. Nope. Joke's on you. I've used that joke format way too much for it to be funny anymore. Woo, on to the next piece of comedic gold.
For example, these people might argue that being attracted to only women with vaginas in no way negatively affects trans people. On the other hand, I would argue that it's more complicated than that. We all have our implicit biases built into our preferences, and gender isn't as simple as just the genitals you have.
Your Honor, I object. Women, and this statement is pretty stupid too. It's almost like beating a dead horse at this point, saying there's only two genders and that your parts determine that. But these people just don't want to look at the dead horse that's just being beaten to hell. Like the horse is way over here, just being straight terminated, annihilated, vaporized, deleted. The horse is being deleted over here, and these people are just totally directed that way. I also love how frequently she speaks for everyone in saying we have implicit biases. I think I'd be ballsy enough to say that I don't think there's any such thing as bias when you're dating. What people like this don't realize is dating isn't the same as like a casual social interaction. If you're an asshole to someone because they're trans just in passing, then you're just an asshole. But by not dating a trans person because you don't like women with dicks, that doesn't make you an asshole. And you're not doing anything wrong in that either, because you don't owe anybody your attraction or your affection. It's that simple, honestly.
But after I say that, I usually get a bunch of blatantly cis-sexist responses, so I thought I'd address all of those responses at once. Number one, you're being homophobic. In this argument, I often get accused of homophobia, lesbophobia, or lesbian erasure.
You literally just used 3 words, as if they all mean something different.
I don't give a damn.
Yep. Yep. What the fuck does this even mean, Riley? They're called synonyms and words that mean the same. We're both being redundant here and it doesn't strengthen your argument. Yeah, quite the opposite actually. When you use words that aren't familiar to people, but can be figured out using context in 2 seconds, you don't sound smarter, you sound like a prick with a holier than thou mentality. Like, I know what these words mean. Have fun figuring them out, you cis boy.
By lesbians who believe that I'm trying to change their sexual orientation or identity. They say that my language sounds a lot like a dude who tried to turn them straight, or like conversion therapy. Those responses are rooted in cis-sexism. This is because I'm not telling lesbians that they can't be lesbians. If you're a woman who only likes women, go ahead, identify as a lesbian. But some women have penises, and if the fact that some lesbians might be attracted to those women offends you, it's because you don't think trans women are real women.
I hear the words you're saying.
Some women have penises.
But what do you mean? Martin Luther King didn't die for this shit. I'm not even lying here and making it up for the video. It's genuinely kind of hard to follow her videos because it's just cut after cut after cut after cut. Slow it down. I barely understand these words regular speaking. Don't get me wrong, by the way. I don't care what you call yourself or how you live your life. It's really not going to affect me at all. I'm going to sleep just fine. Well, maybe not just fine. I'm going to sleep. And I'm not trying to damn anyone to hell. It's just a tad annoying when people like this try to force their way of thinking down your throat and make me or you seem like we're just inherently bad people if we're not on board with their agenda completely. Like, acceptance doesn't necessarily mean inclusion. I'll break bread with anybody if they're a cool person, but I'm not gonna fuck you. I'm sorry. I know I'm horrible.
That's because these accusations of homophobia make it sound like I'm trying to convince lesbians to like—
Oh no, baby, what is you doing?
Preferences for women with vaginas over women with penises might be partially informed by the influence of a cis-sexist society.
Based on the definition of the word normal, women with penises is not by any means normal, nor is it traditional to human nature, or any animal nature for that matter. I'm not one for drugs, but tell me what you're on and I'll try those. Those are some rotund ass thoughts, bro.
Number 2, you're upholding rape culture. This is honestly the worst response that I've heard and probably the most cis-sexist one. That's because trans women have a long history of being accused of being rapists by cis women. It's the logic behind bathroom bills that prevent trans women from using the right bathroom. It's why some cis women are terrified of the idea of sharing a locker room with a trans woman. This is a very common tactic used by anti-trans folks to discredit trans women as just men trying to invade women's spaces so they can rape them.
Honestly, I don't think that's it. I don't think a lot of trans people, and I say people because I genuinely don't know what to say when I'm thinking about a man or a woman. But if a man is willing to dress like a woman, act like a woman, and have the humility to walk into a woman's room despite the stares and judgment, he deserves that rape, I'll tell you what. I'm kidding, read the banner, it's a joke. But really, if a man is willing to do all that, I don't think the general concern is someone is going to be raped. I mean, he's probably not playing for that team anymore. My opinion is, people just think it's weird and not normal for one not to be like the other. 6 are innies, 1's an outie. 1 is protruding, 6 are sunken. 1 can be grabbed. The other can be grabbed with slightly more effort. You get it?
Even if this is not your intention when bringing this up, this is what you are implying and it is where this argument comes from.
So any argument I make comes down to rape no matter what? And you get to decide what I'm implying or what the underlying tone of what I'm saying is? Is that what she's saying here? Do you think a group of lionesses having a lioness night out on the jungle left all the males at home with the cubs, right? Got them a zebra so they're not hungry. Do you think they would let a male lion in just because he says he's a lioness? No. They're gonna complain to the state.
Suggesting that trans women are rapists for wanting to be fully recognized as women is extremely harmful. And I should note that I'm not saying you have to do anything without consent. I'm a big fan of affirmative consent, and you should never feel pressured to have sex with somebody. This isn't about an individual. This is not saying you have to have sex with a trans woman or you're cis-sexist. It's saying that you should examine the societal influences on your preferences. There's a massive difference between honing in on individual scenarios and considering wider societal issues and attitudes.
Let's play a game. It's called Devil's Advocate. Let's say, yeah, okay, people strictly don't want to date trans people because society says so. Who gives a shit? It's an individual's choice at the end of the day. Also, while we're at it, can we just dispel the notion that because something is societally influenced, it's intrinsically wrong? Society says theft is wrong. Society says murder's wrong. Society says rape is wrong. Society has more or less formed every law if you think about it.
Number 3, I'm allowed to have my preferences. Technically, you're right.
No, not technically. You are allowed to have your preferences. Calm down, Hitler.
You're allowed to have your preferences and you don't have to change anything. But there's more to it than that, and ignoring the deeper issues by stopping at a surface level analysis doesn't do this issue any justice.
Riley, my guy, my girl, Riley. There's not something deep-rooted in every opinion that goes against yours. Straight people prefer not to have sex with people who have the same genitalia as them. It starts and stops there, really. There's no digging to be done. You're trying to excavate a sandbox.
Like, you're allowed to have a lot of things. You're allowed to have prejudice towards trans people, but that doesn't mean you should. So if we look a little deeper into this issue, there's the possibility of your genital preferences being at least somewhat partially informed by growing up in a cis-sexist society.
There's no way you think people just started civilization with the ground floor being, we hate trans people, we don't know what that is yet, but we hate them. What I'm saying is, why do you think that going against the grain all of a sudden should totally uproot how humans behave? I don't know how many times I have to say it, but I'll never understand those who think humans are exempt from the animal kingdom. We're just smarter. Still animals.
There's also the fact that a preference is different than saying you would never do something. Like, having a preference for tall girls is fine, but refusing to date anyone under 5'7" is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, not really. That's kind of exactly what a preference is in this situation. Saying I prefer hazelnut coffee creamer is inherently different from saying I prefer women without dicks. There's levels to this shit.
And obviously that's not a perfect analogy because short girls as a group don't face the societal marginalization that trans women do. But I'm interested in having a conversation about labels and implicit bias and trans-inclusive language. Simply saying, it's my preference, end of discussion, is a good way of sidelining all of those issues and instead centering the feelings of cis people in a discussion that's about trans people.
Dude, there's no way that you think we're turning this conversation into all about us when you literally want us to rewire our brains about how we look at other humans. Are you that delusional, dog? Rewind that and listen to it again, because that might be the most ridiculous thing she said.
Number 4, I have a trans friend who says this is okay. People love their tokens. I've done an entire video on moral licensing and why this is a terrible defense, but in summary, you'll always be able to find trans people to back up your cis-sexist views. You'll always be able to find gay people who spout anti-gay rhetoric. You can even find people of color who openly advocate racist policies. That doesn't make you right. Having a trans friend doesn't mean you're suddenly an expert on trans issues.
Well, no, it doesn't make you an expert, but it gives you insight on what one person of that specific group thinks.
People often internalize negative ideas about their own identities and regurgitate them with passion. I've met gay men who told me that their homosexuality was a sin and that their punishment was to be celibate for their entire lives. And even still, they'd probably go to hell. Obviously, that would be anti-gay for any straight person to say, and it's also not okay for gay people to advocate.
First you tell people their dating preferences are wrong. Then their genital preferences are wrong. Now you're saying people from minorities can't think what they want about the minority they belong to.
In the same way, if trans people are saying cis-sexist garbage, it's still cis-sexist garbage. And look, there are cis people who are on my side as well, so if you think it's okay to point to your token trans friend, then I can just point to my token cis friend.
Not token by definition. Nice try though. My battleship is still miles from being sunk.
Number 5, I'm triggered by penises because of past sexual trauma. That's completely understandable. I've never said that anyone should have to have sex with someone with a penis if they don't want to. If intimacy with someone who has a penis is triggering for you, I would never suggest that you have to do that.
No, you wouldn't suggest they do that. You would just berate them for not thinking parallel to you.
Take your time to heal and work through your trauma at your own pace. Just be aware that the majority of people making the I could never date someone with a penis argument are not doing so because of trauma or triggers.
Why does that matter?
And the last thing I want to say about this is that if you'd rather not have sex with a woman who has a penis, maybe just don't make such a huge deal of it.
No. I shouldn't make a huge deal out of it, but you're the one telling me I'm transphobic for just being born. What do you mean I'm making a huge deal out of it?
Trans women are often afraid of not being found attractive or desirable after coming out, and you're not helping.
Okay, but why is it my responsibility to make people feel accepted? The world doesn't care about straight people feeling, so why should it care about yours? We're all equals, right?
If you really want to be an ally to trans people, you could just not talk about it.
Fine, I'll follow your lead. Stop talking about trans people, and so will I.
And by that, I'm not trying to censor you, okay? So don't pretend this is censorship. You have the freedom to say whatever you want. I'm just asking you to consider if it's necessary to say those things when they reflect harmful or violent rhetoric. Because if you have an opinion that you know is only gonna make people feel bad about themselves, why constantly share it with the world?
Don't like it, don't look at it. That is, of course, unless you plan on making a YouTube video about it. Dollar bills. I agree with not being an asshole and all, but there's better ways to approach getting that message across rather than just saying everyone who disagrees is wrong. If you want my opinion on how trans people can be more accepted, bathroom storms. No, not diarrhea. I mean, get a group of 10 to 15 trans people together and just start going to town on bathrooms, dog. Chug a couple of big gulps and go fucking ham. Nothing makes people more accepting than shitting on their floors. Seriously, look at cats and dogs. They're some of the most loved creatures on the planet, and that's all they do. But for real, the second you stop cramming this bullshit down people's throats, the more accepting you'll find people. You're welcome for the insight, no charge. Just watch ads. Also, can I ask one thing? Can y'all stop unsubbing? Look at this, it's demoralizing. I have to look at my AdSense account every time I look at Social Blade just to stop me from slitting my throat. You've had your fun, now please chill for my mental being. Thanks.
Darling, you